Sup nerds, and welcome back to the Helpware Nerds YouTube channel. Can you believe we're in the final season of Stranger Things? Oh my god, the hype is here. Let's review it, let's get into it. Let's start off with a spoiler-free review. It was very emotional, and honestly, it feels like Stranger Things is back to me. The last couple of seasons where the group was split up, or there was a lot of product placement in season 3. It was still Stranger Things, it was still good, but it didn't feel as good as like season 1 and 2. This feels like we're back to form. This does feel like we're back to form. So, I know it does have problems though, and I will talk about those as well. Like, it's not like it's a perfect outing straight out of the gate. I do think we need to keep in mind it is only volume 1, so it is only half-baked. We don't have the full series. We only have part 1 of the full series, so full arcs aren't complete. We're only halfway through them. The rest will probably complete through volume 2 and the last episode, which is technically volume 3, but it's like volume 2 part 2. Really, if you look at it that way. But let's get into the more spoiler-heavy stuff. So if you haven't watched it, what are you doing on this video? So I will give you a countdown. 3, 2, 1. Click off the video, go watch it, and I'll see you afterwards. Go and have the fun, and let me know your thoughts once you have watched it. So let's break down the story. We pick up with our gang, with the party, after a time skip following season 4. Ambiguous on the time skip. I think it's like a couple of months, maybe a year and a half. Not really sure. They've had time to seal the crack. We know that. Like, Robin says that the first thing she says on the Squawk, which Robin is now the host of the radio show. So, we know they've had time for the military to come in, seal up the crack from the Upside Down, which Vecna created at the end of season 4, but we don't know how long that's actually been. We also know that the group have been doing periodic things that they call crawls. Now, it's a play on a dungeon crawl, which still getting that D&D vibe in there. I love that. But it's Hopper, and we know it's specifically Hopper jumping into the Upside Down while being followed on the outside by Steve and Dustin in the Squawk van, in the WKMZ van, tracking him on the right side up. So they can find Vecna through different zones in the Upside Down. And they're doing this when the military, who have control over the Upside Down portal, are doing what they call burns. Now, we learn that the military have a base inside the Upside Down, which... how long has that been there? Did they build that when they took over, or has that been there the whole time? Because that's a bit of a weird thing to have built in the span of a couple of months. Unless they've just took over an established place that was already there in the Upside Down. Or they built it on the right side up, and because the Upside Down mirrors the right side up, it just appeared. I don't know. Again, not really explained. It's just there, and we know that they're taking things and experimenting on them. We also know that Dustin is trying to keep up Hellfire while the other part of the party are trying to scoot under the radar. And, yeah, it's causing some tension between the party and Dustin. And that is not where that stops. Dustin and Steve's relationship this season is also strained. Now, I've seen some takes online that are saying this is out of character, it's character assassination for Steve and Dustin. I think what people need to take on board is that Dustin is going through a depression arc, and Steve doesn't really know how to help, and he's frustrated, and they're all in a lockdown, so there's not much they can do. They're also all terrified Vecna's going to come back. Nancy's on edge. Steve's worried for Nancy. He's worried for Dustin. He's worried for the other kids. Steve's been in this, like, babysitter friend role for the group since, like, season 2, really. Because, let's face it, Steve in season 1 was an asshole. And from season 2 onwards, he's been in this babysitter friendship role with the group and Nancy. And I feel like it's not character assassination. It's part of the arc of this series, and I feel like we need to wait for it to break and Dustin to actually have his breakdown. And I feel like Steve will be there for Dustin at that point. Now, this is speculation on my part. I can't speak to what's actually going to happen at the end of the series because, well, I'm not a writer. I don't know. But we have seen stills of Steve and Dustin hugging in the Upside Down, so it does feel like that is where they're planning to go with this eventually. But, again, we haven't seen that yet because this is volume 1, so it's half-baked. I just wanted to get that out of the way. I'll continue breaking down the story so far. So we get information from Murray. We get Murray back. Love Murray. That they're gonna be another burn, and so we need to do a crawl. After some shenanigans with the radio station going down because of a technical difficulty, and then Steve and Jonathan, almost forgot his name, Jonathan doing some macho shit, they get it back up and running, they get the information, and they pass it on to everybody, and they do a dungeon crawl. But before that, we get to see Eleven in her Rocky Balboa training montage, showing off her power, which seems to have progressed. Like, her battery has definitely got stronger. She's doing Super Mario leaps over buses. She's able to do a lot, blow up heads with her telekinesis. I know they're watermelons, but still. She seems a lot more powerful than what we've seen her before, and I feel like that's going to come back into play in Volume 2. We see it a little bit later on when she's in the Upside Down with Hopper after some shenanigans, but not too much, and I'll get into why later on. But then we get the dungeon crawl. Things go wrong when the Demogorgons attack, and they lose Hopper, and Hopper is injured from a stray bullet, lost in the Upside Down. Then we move on to episode 2, which is the vanishing of Holly Wheeler. Now, the imaginary friend, I feel like it was too obvious that was going to be Vecna. Now, I don't think they were trying to make it a mystery at all, but the fact that the group didn't have immediate suspicions was a bit concerning to me. Like, Holly starts seeing someone in her head, and they're like, oh, it's just a regular imaginary friend. You've had dealings with Vecna, you are avidly looking for Vecna, and then your little sister starts seeing someone she's calling Mr. What's-It. Why is your brain not immediately going, Vecna is targeting my little sister. That's where my brain would have gone, and I'd not gone through all the shit they've gone through. I feel like they were justified in feeling guilty later on because they should have seen this coming. Like, it was totally on them for not picking up on this with the imaginary friend, in my opinion. Let me know in the comments if you agree with me. But that does bring me to the Demogorgon fight with Karen Wheeler.
Stay away from my daughter.
Everything we know about Karen Wheeler, from her wanting to have an affair with Billy to her being a bit of a drunk, was like, she's not that great of a character. My opinion has kind of flipped a little bit when she got her Molly Weasley moment. What the hell? She basically turned around and went, "Not my daughter, you bitch," to the freaking Demogorgon, smashed that wine bottle, and went toe-to-toe with an eldritch horror. Oh my god, you are kidding me. That was awesome. And in the same vein, Ted, love you to death, mate. Coming in with that golf club to take on the Demogorgon and swinging at him. Love your energy. Does bring me to a downside I have. One of them should have died. I get that Lucas is like, it feels like Vecna kept them alive. However, Ted was slashed across the chest with the Demogorgon. And the heartbreaking scene when Nancy walks in on her mum on the floor, bleeding out, throat slit, gashes all over her. I get keeping one of them alive. I get maybe keeping Karen alive. We needed the information about Mr. Whatsit, about him being called Henry, and things like that. Although we didn't really, because Will kind of figured it out himself. So we're just getting two different, like, bits of exposition that give you the same bit of information. I do feel like they should have killed Ted. Just because I feel like the stakes weren't really there. Like, this season, no one has died in Volume 1. And that attack was the opportune moment for someone to die. And I do feel like it should have been Ted. I feel like we don't really know much about Ted outside of, like, him being the father figure. Karen got, like, her, I wouldn't call it redemption, but she got her moment, so I feel like killing her off might have worked as well. But I do feel like one of them should have died, and I do think it would have worked to have it been Ted, as he just gets slashed and then he's off screen. Whereas we didn't actually see Mrs. Wheeler, Karen, get hurt, so it would have been, we just found her that way. So it would have been like, oh, if she'd have died, it would have been like, oh, they killed her off screen. Whereas Ted, we did see him fight the Demogorgon and get attacked by it, so we would have seen him get killed. I do feel like Ted would have been the option I would have gone with, but the choices were made. And as I alluded to there, we do find out in the taking of Holly Wheeler and subsequent episodes that Will has a connection to the hive mind, and that connection to the hive mind is allowing him to see through the victim's eyes, which brings me to my favourite character this season, dipshit or delightful Derek. Best character progression. He went from dipshit Derek to delightful Derek like that. Great character. Hilarious. Brought that comedy that we needed this season. I think I absolutely loved the way that he was basically cussing at them at the beginning, and then when he was doing the mindfulness and just smacking them on the head with the ruler to send them to go down the hole. Hilarious. When he cussed out the soldier, being like, no offense, officer, but I've seen what's coming and you and your men can't protect shit. That was delightful. I loved dipshit Derek. Delightful Derek. Best character. I hope they save Delightful Derek. And with Delightful Derek, we got the Home Alone style fight with the Demogorgon in Derek's house. Now, am I the only one that got pissed off that they butchered this family's home? Because it's one thing to carve your own floor up and put spikes in your own floor and razor wire in your own floor and destroy your own wine cellar. But you did it to someone else's house. This isn't your home. You broke and entered, you kidnapped, you literally demolished their home. I know in your head you were trying to save dipshit Derek, but like, what? And after shooting the Demogorgon with a tracking dart, the group being Jonathan, Steve, Nancy, and Dustin, then went into the Upside Down and followed the Demogorgon until they crashed into the exact same meat wall as Eleven and Hopper found, before deciding to go to the Hawkins lab where everything started. I feel like that's going to pick up in Volume 2, so I'm going to leave it there with them. But before I do leave it there with them, to anyone that thinks Nancy's going to end up with Steve or Nancy's going to end up with Jonathan, for me personally, I feel like it would be better for the show if Nancy ends up with no one and the show just ends this whole will they, won't they, three-way love triangle thing with none of them getting together and them just realizing that they're better off as friends and that the relationship aspect just doesn't work. Because that's where I sit with that. I don't know if you guys are on the same page. I also feel like we need to see more of the actual relationships like Elle and Mike and Vicky and Robin, which we're not getting. And then everyone's freaking out about Holly, only for us to find out she's dancing around the kitchen and having the best time until she goes on and meets Max. And then, with her interactions with Max, we get to find out what Max has been up to. And we get one of the trippiest scenes I've ever seen, where Max is going through his memories. We get some memories that allude to the play that that some of you may have got to have seen. And the behind the scenes are on Netflix. So if you haven't seen the play, you can at least watch the behind the scenes, which isn't the same really, but like at least it gives us some insight. I haven't been able to see the play, but I have watched the behind the scenes, so it does give you some stuff, and it does look like they're drawing on that play from what I know of the play, on Vecna's backstory. So are they going to make Vecna more tragic than anything? I don't know. We keep getting A Wrinkle in Time references. My brain mixing things up there. A Wrinkle of Time references. And a couple of Back to the Future references as well. So that alludes to a theory that Nerd of the Roundtable from the podcast, Ashley had, which involves time travel. We were discussing this after the show, and we think that like it's getting more and more likely that time travel might be a thing. We've had wormholes introduced with Erica's class. We had the flux capacitor mentioned. Great Scott mentioned. We've had A Wrinkle in Time, which ends with them going like back in time to the moment everything began. Ashley's theory is that they will go back in time to the moment the show began. And with all these references, I'm starting to believe it more and more. I'm not too sure if I'm on board with them doing that. It does feel like it was all a dream cop-out. Hey ho, you get what you get, and you can't get upset. We'll see on New Year's Day here in the UK. But yeah, I do think that them Holly finding Max was a good thing, and us finding out that Max is just trapped in Vecna's mindscape might mean we get to see some characters that died in previous seasons, and I'm putting died in quotation marks, because if they're trapped in Vecna's mindscape, then maybe their consciousness is still alive, where their body is not. So we might get to see Barb again. She was on the red carpet. We might get to see like Christy from season 4 and the iconic TikTok sound, Chrissy Wake Up. So we'll see. Obviously, the group figure out that Vecna is trying to take the kids from Derek's school, and then the military also figure that out, so they take them to the military, and the group try and great escape it and break them out, which goes horribly wrong. Vecna shows up in his Darth Vader aura moment, telling Willis basically nothing, but thanks to a speech from Robin earlier on, Will finally gets grips of himself and taps into Vecna's powers and Eleven's Demogorgons that are about to attack his friends, and then gives them the Vecna special, snapping them to pieces in the most aura-filled moment of the entire show. So I've kind of touched on a lot of what I've liked and what I haven't while I've gone through the recap. But I think my main things that I've liked is the gang being back together in Hawkins. Them being split up last season, while it worked, I didn't particularly like it. It felt weird having them in 2 different locations. It also, I don't like the split the party thing in D&D, and that's what it felt like they were doing last season, playing on that trope. So bringing them back together feels like we're definitely in the end game, and everything's going well. 11's power development, that feels very compelling, and seeing where that's going to go. I do feel like we're going to get a psychic battle. While I haven't really touched on it this throughout the recap, 11 and Hopper were going into the Upside Down. They've ran through the Upside Down. They've met this giant meat wall that we find out goes all the way around the Upside Down. And Vecna took 12 kids. That could be a clock. Vecna does have a clock motif. So we do have that. And then she went into the military base. She did her like searching thing, and she went into the military base because she thought she'd found Vecna in there. And spoiler alert, it wasn't Vecna, it was 8, which, if you don't remember, is one of the other experiments from Hawkins' lab that 11 calls her sister. So we found 8 in there, and the military was using 8's powers as 11's kryptonite. Which is why I said we didn't really get to see 11 do much power-wise this season, because every time she tried, the military would activate that machine, and she wouldn't be able to use her powers. However, when she did get to use them, she went full awesome mode, and we got a moment of her diving into a soldier's memory. We got a moment of her like taking out soldiers like they were candy. It was so cool. Hopper having a bulletproof vest, willing to take himself out rather than risk 11, getting flashbacks to his daughter again. Joyce and Hopper being confirmed to be in a relationship. I'm not totally on board with that. I don't particularly like that decision. I don't know if I'm alone in that. Let me know in the comments if I am. But I feel like their moment where Hopper's about to go into the Upside Down and she's like, promise you'll come back, and he didn't answer her. And then stuff like that. And her saying, you didn't give me an answer. I think like that's going to come back in a tragic way where either she's going to die or he's going to die. And so they're never actually going to get an answer. Same with Will and 11. They had a moment where they talked about their future and how they'll move away and live somewhere very happy, and they'll not have to deal with any of this crap in the future. I feel like that optimism and stuff like that, that's going to come back to bite us in the ass, and we're not going to actually get to see that. And either 11 or Will will die. Not Will, Mike. Sorry, I said Will and I meant Mike. So, I do think that's going to come back to bite 11 and Mike in the ass. I think it's 11 that will die, and I think she'll die fighting Vecna. I also think that we'll basically get like a charmed power of 3 moment with Will, 8, and 11 fighting Vecna, and maybe they'll all die doing so. That's a theory. But back to the things that I liked. Will is front and center of the story again, which is great. I feel like he did get sidelined in a couple of series, season 3 and 4 respectively. And Robin's speech to Will was the best part of the entire series. Basically, don't look for validation in other people. You've got to find it within yourself. She did it in a way of like helping Will come to terms with who he is, but relating it to herself. That I think helped Will empower himself, and I really, really loved the message. I think it was the best part of the entire series. I loved the military lockdown over Hawkins. It added real world stakes that weren't just the Upside Down and Vecna's threat. We got the military involved, so we got real world involved, and it's not just Vecna big bad. But there are a couple of weaknesses. Now, I don't have as many as a lot of people, and that's, I feel like Lucas was underutilized. We got a few scenes of him with Max's comatose body, and we got him aura farming on the bullies that were trying to take down Dustin at the beginning. And we got a scene with him in the tunnels trying to protect a kid and baiting the Demogorgon. But we didn't really get any character development or any moment with Lucas, like with any of the other characters having his moment to shine. Now, I feel like that might come in volume 2 when Max wakes up, because I do think Max is going to wake up. I feel like that was a bit of a missed opportunity. I don't feel like we got enough time with the party. To be honest, I think it's the party problem. Mike and 11 didn't have a lot of time to get before everything kicked off. And she had to run off into the Upside Down. We didn't get a lot of time with Joyce and Hopper to cement the relationship. We just got told they were in a relationship, and a little bit of come back to me sort of banter. We got that opening shot of Steve and Robin in the radio station, but we didn't really get a lot of Robin and Steve interaction. While there's been vying for affection and stuff like that, there's not been a lot of interaction between Nancy and Jonathan to like show off where their relationship is. It's just been like people saying they're unhappy, and then Jonathan being shown with an engagement ring, and a couple of conversations, but the focus has been on like what's going off. And then the biggest casualty, I think, of underutilized characters and not enough screen time is Robin and Vicky. We get a scene where Robin and Vicky are talking about going on a date and how Robin has to cancel. Will sees them kissing, and then they run off. And then the next time Vicky is seen, Robin is trying to avoid her because she has to cancel the date again. That's the only times we've seen Vicky in Volume 1. And I feel like we should have got a little bit more time with that. Maybe in Episode 1, just to show that relationship is there. I do feel like it's a pacing issue. Like, everything was done at a breakneck speed. I think if they just slowed it down, I do feel like it's because it's split into volumes. If it was done like a regular TV show, and we got all of it at once, like spread out across a couple of weeks, it would have been done that way, and it would have been slowed down, so we got time with more of these characters before everything just hit the fan. But we didn't. Even Derek suffers from that. Like I said, his turnaround from dipshit to delightful Derek, while I like it, it's very quick. And you could chalk it up to the fact that the Demogorgon attacks. But it is still very, very quick. It's very quick from this group kidnapped me, I hate these people, to I trust these people, I'm going to be their spy. And no one died. I'm going to stick to that. No one died. I feel like someone should have died either when the Wheelers were attacked or in the final episode of this volume. We should have had a death, but we didn't. And I do feel like that's a weakness of this season. So let me know if you feel like my weaknesses aren't really that weak, or if you disagree with them. Obviously, at the end of the series volume, we've got the moment where Vecna kidnapped every single one of the kids. He's left, so we've got that cliffhanger on us. What's going to happen next? Will got his aura farming moment, which that is the coolest anyone with a bowl cut has ever looked. Especially when he did that, wiping the blood away. He looked sick as fuck. That was ace. And then we've got Max and Holly working on a way to escape what they're nicknaming Camazots. So there's a lot to do in Volume 2, and I hope it lives up to it. Like I said, I feel like there's going to be a couple of psychic fights. A major character death has got to happen in the next volume. I feel like that's going to be where the Volume 2 is going to end on Boxing Day. And then we're going to pick up on New Year's Day after that fallout. And then Holly being taken and nicknamed a cleric by Mike can't be an accident. As well as Dimension Door and wormholes being mentioned, can't be an accident. There's got to be something going on here. Either time travel or a doorway between the Upside Down and this world, or the Upside Down and Dimension X, which can be seen in the play. So I don't know. We'll have to see. I do think Volume 2's got a lot to do. But that's my thoughts on Volume 1 of Season 5. What do you think? What are you most looking forward to? What shocked you the most? And, who's your favourite character? Let me know in the comments. Don't forget to like and subscribe and ring that notification bell to stay up to date for when we drop new content. And I'll see you in the next one. Stay happy, stay healthy, and most of all, stay nerdy.